StraighTAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to turn liabilities into assets. Before we get into what this is about and where it's going, let me tell everybody, every day I send out a text message free of charge. Everyone who's in my text community, this message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. If you would like to receive this message, and I shouldn't even say if, since you would like to receive this message, if you're not already, all you got to do is text me right now to get the daily motivation every day at 305-384-6894. Just send a text to that number right now, 305-384-6894. Let me know you want to get the daily motivation every day when that message goes out. Because you're a member of the text community, you'll be getting that message. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the place where you go to work with me directly. That's the only place you can be coached by me. People ask me all the time, Dre, do you offer coaching or anything like that? The answer is yes, I do offer coaching and anything like that. The only way to get it is you got to be a member of Work on Your Game University. That is the only way to be coached by me. That's the only way that you can have consistent, direct conversations with me. That's the only way you can get access to things like bulletproof mindset, people skills, sell yourself, content machine course, next mission framework, the business builder framework, the Work on Your Game system, 30 days of discipline, ASAP confidence. Anything you hear me talk about on this show, understand that we have codified and laid out frameworks for all this stuff, and I have processes for teaching people like yourself how to apply these specifically and personally to your life and your situation. The only way to get those, the only way to get access to any of that is you must be a member of Work on Your Game University. The way that you join is by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. So with those things out of the way, let's get into the topic here today, which is, again, how to turn liabilities into assets. So let's get definitions for these terms, as I like to do. A liability, speaking financially, I'm just speaking in a financial sense, a liability is something that is owed to somebody else. In other words, it is taking things away, taking assets away from you. A liability takes things away. In other words, it takes money out of your pocket. So anything that's costing you money every month, for example, on your financial statement, will go on the statement as a liability by financial definition. An asset, on the other hand, is, and this is just the general definition, is a useful or valuable thing, person, or quality. And the financial definition of an asset is anything that's putting money in your pocket. So the paycheck that you receive, that goes on your financial statement as an asset because it's putting money in your pocket. So with all those definitions out of the way, here's what we were talking about here today. It's about the alchemy of turning things that are costing you into things that are actually supplying you and allowing you to multiply and increase. That's what we're talking about here today. Taking things that are costing you and alchemizing them into things that are actually helping you and moving you forward. Would that be beneficial for you if you took things that are costing you right now, that are hurting you and slowing you down, and we could turn them into things that are actually helping you and moving you forward? Would you be a lot more productive, effective, happy, and successful an individual if you could actually do that, if you had that skill? Good. So you should be taking notes on what I'm going to say here today, not just listen to it if you're answering yes. Point number one, topic once again is how to turn liabilities into assets. Number one is repositioning. Reposition. In business, positioning is the practice of how you talk about a product, offer, service, and how it is perceived in the minds of your prospects. Positioning is basically how you present yourself or your thing, whatever you're selling, to the world. The way that you position an offer plays a big role in who you sell it to, how much you sell it for, how people understand it, how much you will be able to charge from it, and ultimately, positioning determines the success of what you offer. When you change the positioning of an offering, it can dramatically change the results of what you get from that offer, or the results of that offering on your end, not for your prospects, also for them, but most importantly, we're talking about it for you. When you change the positioning of a thing, you can change dramatically the results that you're going to produce from your offering of that thing. I'll give you an example. Many of you once owned, or you may still own, the George Foreman grill. Remember the George Foreman super grilling machine, or whatever they were calling it? what a lot of people don't know about the George Foreman grill is that that grill was already for sale and had been sitting on shelves collecting dust in department stores for years, and it wasn't a very successful product. It was looked at as a commodity. I mean, if you needed a little grill to put in your kitchen at home, well, you could pick from any one of the 30 grills that was on the shelves at Target or Walmart. This grill was one of those 30 grills. It didn't matter. It was just a race to the bottom. Which one did somebody want to pick? Didn't matter. There was nothing differentiating about any one of them. But here's what happened. The company who created that grill decided to reposition the product. The first thing they did was go get a celebrity endorsee. That was a former boxer turned, I guess he became an evangelist and a professional speaker by the name of George Foreman. Most of you know who he is from the grill, not from his boxing career. George Foreman was a great boxer, but from his boxing career. And I haven't seen it because I'm not a big screen watcher, at least TV screens. There's a documentary about George Foreman that just came out. Maybe by the time you're hearing this, maybe a month or two ago. Some of you may have seen that, maybe know more about George Foreman based on that. But most of you know him from the grill. And that was the first thing they did, was get a celebrity endorsee. Here's the second thing they did. Instead of selling the grill, now the Foreman grill, on shelves in Target and Walmart exclusively, they kept selling it there. But here's the other thing they did. They started selling the grill on the Home Shopping Network and on QVC. Y'all know what those are, right? Those are the TV networks that you can turn on the TV and it's just basically infomercials back to back, and they just sell you stuff. And people do actually call those numbers, and they do actually buy stuff. I have worked in call centers back in the day. People do call those numbers, and they call a lot. And there's a lot of people working those call centers, and the phones never stop ringing. We're not calling you; they call us. So those things do actually work. So those two moves create a completely different positioning of that little grill. But understand, nothing about the product had changed. It was the exact same product. The only thing they did was change the positioning of the product, and all of us had one. So when I mentioned the Foreman grill, most of you knew what I was talking about, right? Because either you had one or you knew somebody who had one. And I bought mine at probably a Target or a Walmart. I did not buy it by calling a 1-800 number, but that was part of the process that created the popularity of that product. But again, nothing about it changed. The only thing that changed was the positioning of the grill. They put a name on it, they put an endorsee with it, and they started selling it on TV. All of a sudden, George Foreman became, at the time when that grill was popping off, and this was less than 20 years ago, because I remember the first apartment that I moved into when I moved out of my parents' house, and this was in 2006 is when I moved out of my parents' house for the first time. When I moved out. I left to play some basketball, but then I came back. The first time I moved out and knew I wasn't coming back was 2006. That's when I bought the Foreman grill. So that was 2020. Was that 17 years ago? So it was less than 20 years ago. George Foreman at the time was one of the top 5 all-time endorsees in terms of athlete income. In terms of athletes who have become endorsees, money made from endorsements alone, George Foreman was in the top 5. Because of the money he made from the Foreman grill. What else did George Foreman endorse that you can name? Most of you probably can't name a single other thing he endorsed. That's because he made so much money just from endorsing this grill. That is what positioning can do for your business. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to turn a liability into an asset. Number 2 is delete. Delete. You know what that is. If you got a computer, it's the key at the top right corner of your computer, or it's close to the top right corner of your computer. You delete stuff. Sometimes a liability is just that. It's just a liability. It's just a thing that's costing you. It's not really doing anything for you. It doesn't make any sense for you to keep having it. And the longer you keep it around, the more it costs you and the less value it is bringing. It's just leeching value away from you, and there's nothing valuable you're going to get out of it, at least based on your best judgment. So you can make the decision at some point to just cut your losses, get rid of the thing that's costing you, and just let it go. This is what we call addition by subtraction, deletion. If something is costing you $100 a week, you can delete it, and now you have indirectly saved, quote unquote, $100 a week, because now you're not losing the $100. So now you still got it. As the saying goes, a penny saved is a penny earned, and there's some challenges to that point, but I want you to get the spirit of the point that I'm making here. Sometimes it is simple as cutting off the cancer. Sometimes a thing is just not serving you. If you just get rid of that, you get better just by not getting worse anymore. Everybody understand? If you got a bad person around you in life, you don't have to try to outweigh the bad person by getting a whole bunch of good people to balance them out. No, just get rid of the bad person. Just by eliminating them, you get better because now you don't have the bad in your life anymore. Sometimes you simply got to stop digging when you catch yourself in a hole. All right, that's what we're talking about here when I say deletion. When possible, And if you do not see any other better options, sometimes this is just the simplest thing to do. Just get rid of the bad thing so that you no longer have that taken away from you. Even if you didn't add a good thing, just getting rid of the bad thing is success in itself. All right, if you have a toothache and you go get some cream or some pills, or the dentist does something that alleviates the toothache, you don't need anything good to come in. You just need to get rid of the pain. As long as the pain stops, you're happy, right? And if you ever had any type of physical injury or something along those lines, you know, if you can get something that numbs the pain, that makes you feel better. Even though you didn't do anything necessarily good, you just stopped the bad stuff. So sometimes we just got to look at it that way and look at that as a win. We can take that as a success. So when you don't see any better options, this is the simplest thing to do. Understand, not everything nor everyone can be salvaged or saved. Sometimes something just needs to be thrown in the garbage. Any of you ever had a car that was just a piece of junk? I had some cars that were pieces of junk. Not too many. I had a couple cars that were just straight up pieces of junk. And when I was done with those cars and it was time to replace those cars, there wasn't much value left to be gained from them. Maybe somebody could chop it up and sell it for parts. I don't know anything about that world, but there wasn't a whole lot of value to be gotten from it. Like, just throw this away. There's nothing we can actually get out of this. Sometimes I have home items. Any of you, if you move from one home to another, you're looking at stuff. When we move, we tend to look at everything we got because you got to pack everything up. You're looking at stuff like, I don't even use this. This is sitting in the closet. I just keep moving it from house to house. It has really no value. I don't know if I could sell this to anybody, and if I did, how much money would anybody pay for this? $20? Is it even worth it? Me taking the time to list this on some site where somebody might buy it, meet with them so they can go see it, then all the conversation, and then maybe I get $20. Is it even worth it? No, let me just throw this in the garbage. You probably save more time throwing it in the garbage than the money you would make from trying to sell it to somebody else. Sometimes you just got to throw something in the garbage. Everybody know what I'm talking about here? Sometimes you just need to throw it in the trash. There's nothing that you can get out of it. You just need to throw it away, get rid of it, and start over with a clean slate. This is what people do, for example. And again, this can go many layers deeper, but for example, when somebody goes through bankruptcy proceedings, if any of you ever done that or you know anyone who has, that's what happens in bankruptcy, is when someone is basically deleting and erasing their debt that they were either unable or unwilling to get out of, so they can start again with a clean slate. Now, there's going to be some marks on your report because of that, but you get what I'm saying. You get the spirit of the point that I'm making here. Sometimes you gotta declare bankruptcy with a liability that you have in your life. Like, all right, this is just a bad idea. This just didn't work out. That's okay. Let's throw this away and let's move on to the next thing instead of trying to save something that clearly shouldn't be saved. All right, let's just stop trying to revive a dead dog and just let it be dead. Let's just bury it and move on to the next thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a very smart thing to do, and it takes a solid amount of discipline for us to be able to do this, especially when we're doing this with something that we have created or we have already put our resources into. To just say, you know what, this is dead, let's kill it off and move on to the next thing. It's hard for a lot of people to do because you're emotionally invested. That's why that's where the discipline part comes in, and this is something that you get a ton of help with when you get into the Bulletproof Mindset framework inside of Work On Your Game University. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to turn liabilities into assets. Number 3, play a different game. Sometimes you just got to switch up the game that you're playing. Like we talked about this earlier with the Foreman Grill. They just changed the game. Instead of playing the game of be on the shelves in department stores and hope somebody picks us up off the shelf, why don't we do something proactive to get people to know specifically about this grill, to be looking for specifically for this grill, and now we'll sell more in Target simply because we invested in getting George Foreman and putting it on TV, which is how they sold it to me. So in basketball, for example, I'll give you another example. Let's say you're playing on a high school basketball team and you're sitting at the end of the bench. You're not even playing. You don't really get any playing time. Nobody looks at you as a good player. Nobody sees you as going anywhere in basketball. But what you start doing on the side, outside of basketball practice, where you're not even playing, you get on YouTube and you start doing funny tricks and silly stuff around the concept of basketball, and you start to make a little name for yourself as an influencer in the basketball space, basketball/comedy space on YouTube. Even though you're not that great of a basketball player, just regular direct basketball as we know it on TV, you start doing stuff on YouTube that's entertaining to some kids who might be interested in basketball, but maybe they're not hardcore. Maybe you're not that hardcore either, but you start to build an audience over there, and all of a sudden You might be the biggest celebrity in the neighborhood. You may be a bigger celebrity through the funny, tricky stuff you do on YouTube with basketball than anybody who's on an actual basketball team and playing quote unquote real basketball, and they're better at it than you. But you're better at this thing that you're doing than they are. You're just playing a different game. So you took the elements of what you were okay at or mediocre at, and then you became amazing at playing a different game. This is a smart thing to do, folks. And the good news about the world that we live in today is that many of you have these options available to you, whereas your parents or your older siblings may not have had these options. These options have just come about, I would say, around roughly about the last 15 years. These options have become available to where you don't have to do things the normal, straight and narrow path way. You have many different alternatives and many different options for playing a different game that, again, your parents did not have. So those of you who are under the age of, let's say, 30, and you're looking at your parents, or you're looking at yourself, first of all, and you see the way that you played a different game and you created these options for yourself, and now you have these possibilities at your fingertips, and you're feeling yourself, you're feeling good about yourself, and then you're looking at your parents like, man, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they become an entrepreneur like me? Why didn't they become an influencer like me? Why didn't they take advantage of stuff the way that I take advantage of stuff? Let me offer you all a word of caution, a word of wisdom. Understand that people over the age of 30, or even definitely people over the age of 40, when we were, let's say, under 25, these options just were not available. You couldn't just play a different game just because you wanted to, because the options were not there. So just make sure you keep that in mind as you're thinking about the opportunities you have now, as opposed to the opportunities that somebody, let's say, twice your age had when they were in the position that you're in, at the age that you were. So the world that we're in now, there are many different options for playing a different game, whereas back in the day, you couldn't just play a different game that easily. You could, but it was not very easy to do. There were many barriers to entry that the world that we're in now, all of us, there are very few barriers to entry to many opportunities in making money now. So let's go back to my example here. Just let's say you're a high school basketball player who's a bum on a basketball team. Then you get on YouTube, you become a celebrity. Your ability didn't change. Your ability to play basketball has not changed. You're the same mediocre player that you were before. But what you did was change the positioning of what you were doing. And in this position, the new position, you're a star, whereas in the old position, you were a nobody. So you could take the exact same skill set, folks. We're out of the example now. Exact same skill set, or the exact same process, or the exact same product. Simply use it in a different way, and then all of a sudden you have a completely different outcome. I'm gonna give you another example. Many of you familiar with sticky notes, right? Post-it notes, those little small square notes, like 2 inches by 2 inches, is about maybe 2-3 inches, that you can write something on. You can stick it on the wall, or stick it on the board, or stick it on your computer screen, and it just stays there. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Post-it notes. The 3M company is a company that's famous for Post-it notes, and they tell this story. The guy who invented it, or the first guy involved, was a guy named Spencer Silver, Dr. Spencer Silver. He was a scientist for 3M, and his job was coming up with new adhesives for the company. That was literally his job. He was in the process of looking for bigger and stronger and tougher adhesives, and he came across something that clearly did not fit that description. The adhesive that he came up with was not bigger, stronger, nor tougher. It was none of those things. But in his semi-failure, what he noticed is that he found these, I think they call them microspheres, and that is an adhesive that had a removability characteristic, meaning you could stick it to something, but you could also remove it, and then you could stick it again and remove it, and stick it again and remove it, which was not what he was looking for, but he noticed that was a thing, and he just took note of it and said, this is interesting that you could stick it on something, take it off. Where could this ever be used? He wasn't quite sure, but he noticed that it was a thing, so he just kept it in the back of his mind. So you could attach it to a surface but easily peel it off. Now, meanwhile, there was another scientist working at 3M. So 3M had some assets. They had some scientists working for them. This guy named Art Fry. Now, Art, in addition to working as a scientist during the day, he also worked in the choir at his church at night. And he would use little slips of paper to stick into the hymnal. That's the book of hymns. The hymns are just the songs that they sing in choir. He would use little slips of paper to stick inside of the book just to make sure he kept note of which songs he wanted to call up for the choir to practice and things like that. And he was getting annoyed and frustrated with the fact that every time he put those little scraps of paper in the book, they would fall out of the book. He would open the book and all those little scraps of paper would fall out, and he would lose his place and he wouldn't be able to find the songs that he was looking for. So Art and Dr. Art and Dr. Silver came together, and they start to exchange ideas, talk about what they were dealing with, And they putting their heads together. Long story short, Post-it notes came out of their conversations. So Dr. Fry needed something that stuck to things, and Dr. Silver said, well, I just happen to have come across that by accident. So today you got Post-it Extreme notes, which is like, you could post, I didn't know this was a thing, but there are Post-it notes that are actually waterproof, and you can stick it to like a piece, you can stick it to a brick wall and it will actually stay there. I didn't know this was a thing, but this is a thing. I saw this on Post-it's website, 3M's website. You got Post-it dry erase services. There's even, you can buy like surfaces. So you can buy a whiteboard for Post-it. How exactly it works, I mean, it's basically a whiteboard. So you basically have extended the brand extension is what we call that. And you even have a Post-it app. There's an app for Post-it notes. What it does, I don't know. Go look it up, download it on your phone, and you tell me what it does. There's also the Post-it Flex Surface, which is basically another whiteboard. And also you see people have adopted this concept of sticky notes. So even in the Apple computer, the MacBook, you can open up a sticky notes app and you can have sticky notes on the desktop of your computer, the digital desktop, not the physical desktop. All of this came from somebody having an idea that they decided to play a different game with. Again, Dr. Silver was trying to find a strong adhesive. He found a weak adhesive, but it could be restuck. And they came up with a better idea for it. And now Post-it notes has probably sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product over the years. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is how to turn liabilities into assets. Liability is something that's taken away, assets something that's adding on in a general sense. Point number one, repositioning. Positioning in business is practice of how you talk about a product, offer, service, how it's perceived, and the way you position it. It plays a big role in how you sell it, what you sell, who you sell it to, and how much money you can make. When you change the position of something, a lot of things can change. So for example, the Foreman grill was just a grill. So they put Foreman's name on it, put it on TV, all of a sudden it blew up. Number two, deletion. Sometimes a liability is just a liability. You just got to cut off the cancer. This thing is not producing anything. Just get rid of it. Sometimes you get better by just getting rid of the bad stuff. You don't need to add anything extra. Just get rid of the stuff that is not helping you. And number three, play a different game. You could be the most mediocre player on the basketball team at your local high school, but you get on YouTube, start doing funny tricks. You could be the biggest star in town simply because you decide to play a different game with the same skill set that you had before. The big thing about this playing a different game thing is that you don't have to improve your game at all. All you got to do is change your game. Change the game that you are playing. Take the same skill sets, and over here you were ignored, but over there you are adored. And you want to go to where you are adored, not where you're ignored. In the world that we live in today, there is a place that would adore you for what you bring to the table right now, your current skill set. Your job, here's the work, is you got to figure out what that place is and how to position yourself such that they see the value in you. That's your job. And let me tell you how I can help with that. First of all, text me, let me know you want to get the daily motivation every day for free. My number is 305-384-6894. Here's how I can help you with that. Come join my university. Work on Your Game University is where you can be coached by me. I can take a look at your situation, see where you're at. Let's figure out what the mindset is that you need to have in place to make this work. What's the strategy to apply it? What is the system to apply it over and over again? And how are you going to be held accountable to execute on a consistent basis? All that happens inside of Work on Your Game University. So if you want to work with me directly, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and we'll tell you what your next step is right there. Very easy, very simple. Work on your game. Dre all day.